Good evening. Welcome to another class session with Professor 219. I'm teaching an online class on how to survive as a conservative in today's messed up America. You don't need to know my real name. What I'm really doing is providing sufficient information for you to win an argument with just about anybody about the issues that face us, and how to deal with such things as left-wing mainstream media and social media. Let's see the most recent headlines. First, there were a couple of political debates last night between Pennsylvania Senate candidates and New York gubernatorial candidates. Let's deal with the first one first. That was John Fetterman, also known as Shrek, against Dr. Mehmet Oz. I'm sure you know Dr. Oz. He had his own show for 13 years. He was also a frequent guest on Oprah Winfrey. Now, Dr. Oz had a very composed, confident appearance in the debate, and John Fetterman was all over the place. The poor guy had a stroke just a couple of days before the Democratic primary in Pennsylvania, and he's having a lot of trouble speaking and hearing what's being spoken to him. He actually had a teleprompter or some other device providing him written copies of the questions that were being asked to him. What other senator would have that for him in the Senate? After the debate, all kinds of left-wing talking heads and other people were accusing Dr. Oz of being a bully for basically just engaging Mr. Fetterman and talking to him like senators have for hundreds of years across the aisle to each other. Okay? Dr. Oz was acting like a Republican senator speaking to a Democratic senator, or, if you prefer, a Democratic senator speaking to a Republican senator. He didn't pull any punches. He was very straightforward. He was very confident. And Mehmet Oz won the debate, hands down, no doubt about it, and he's going to win the election. It's going to be great. John Fetterman is going to go back to whatever small town he used to be the mayor of, and he's going to talk about how dope addicts should have safe places and clean needles to shoot up with for free. And he's going to talk about no cash bail for people accused of violent felonies. And he's just going to fade into obscurity, as he should. The other race is between a gentleman named Lee Zeldin and the current sitting governor of New York, Kathy Hochul. Okay? If you'll recall, Kathy Hochul arose to that position from the lieutenant governor's office when Andrew Cuomo resigned as New York governor in disgrace. There have been several governors in both New York and Illinois who have resigned in disgrace or been removed from office, and some of them have gone to prison. And it's always pretty much the same things, either bribery or prostitutes or both. Now, the debate between Hochul and Zeldin was kind of a fair fight, because neither one of them has had a stroke to our knowledge. But again, the Republican, in my opinion, won the debate. It was a lot closer. Kathy Hochul wasn't stuttering too much, but when she was confronted on things like cashless bail and funding the police and restrictions on abortion, she also, like Mr. Fetterman, was all over the map, just grasping at straws. And At one point, she asked Lee Zeldin, well, why do you care if accused violent felons are released with no bail? Let's look into Mr. Zeldin's background. Shortly before this debate, he was the target of an assassination attempt. Also, there was a shooting out in front of his house where his twin daughters were at the time of the shooting. Now, come on. If you were Lee Zeldin, wouldn't you be concerned about these guys getting out of jail with no bail before the cops are even done writing the arrest report? I think you would be. There are hundreds of thousands of people in New York City and other large cities in New York State who have been the victims of violent crime, and the perpetrators are walking free. And Sonny Hostin on The View was crude enough to say, in response to the news that Lee Zeldin had been the target of an assassination attempt, that, well, he's a divisive figure. People hate him. You know, you're allowed to be divisive in this country. Everybody has freedom of speech. Maybe I'm a little bit divisive, but you know what? On the issue of crime and whether violent criminals accused of violent felonies should be held with, cash bail and forced to post bail before they get out of jail, I think that's a very uniting concept, okay? The people on one side should be the violent felons themselves and people close to them, like their immediate families. And on the other side should be everybody else, probably 90 or 95% of the population. This is a very uniting concept. Violent felons should be held until they can post a cash bail. I think that's fair. I think that's reasonable. Don't you? Evidently, Kathy Hochul does not, and neither does John Fetterman, which is why I think their days in politics are numbered. The Democratic Party has adopted and espoused a whole bunch of really strange, stupid, crazy ideas this year. And these are just a couple of them. Now you notice that they've controlled both the House and the Senate and the White House for 2 years now. And they haven't even talked about legalizing marijuana on the federal level. As many of you may know, even though I'm very conservative, I support the legalization of marijuana for recreational and medicinal use. It is consistent with the concepts of ordered liberty and conservatism. You know, if you want to smoke a joint on your back porch, it doesn't hurt anybody. And it's not a gateway drug either. It's been maligned as a gateway drug by many conservatives in the Republican Party, and that's why the Republican Party isn't going to support legalization. But you know what the real gateway drug is? Childhood trauma. If you look into the background of all alcoholics and all drug addicts, you will find roughly 99% of them have experienced some kind of childhood trauma and are trying to numb the feelings from their childhood. The solution for these people is therapy and a joint. Sorry, not sorry. Now, let's talk about a few other topics. Let's talk about another politician from the state of New York, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I've kind of picked on her before. She doesn't like it when conservatives call her AOC, but she loves it when left-wing media do, because it fits very neatly into a headline. You know, why use 7 syllables or 11 syllables when you only need 3? AOC. AOC was on the cover of Gentleman's Quarterly, also known as GQ, about 6 weeks ago. And of course, they interviewed her extensively on the interior of the magazine, and they asked her a lot of softball questions, which is what you expect from a left-wing publication interviewing a left-wing politician. Okay? And she said things like, well, I don't even know if I'm going to be alive by the end of September. Well, today is October 26th, and nobody has even pointed a gun at her, or a knife. Okay? Gosh, what a surprise. You know, if you're a controversial figure in politics, and a lot of people are talking about you, and you have millions of followers on Twitter, you could paper the walls with the death threats you get. Okay? That comes with the territory. AOC should have expected that sort of thing, but nobody has even pointed a gun at her. She should talk to people like Lee Zeldin, for example, who have had guns pointed at them, or perhaps Steve Scalise from Louisiana, who was shot by a Bernie Sanders supporter a few years ago, while Mr. Scalise was playing second base at a congressional baseball practice in Arlington, Virginia. The attempted assassin was there to kill Republican congressmen. And he shot 9 people before he was killed by police. James Hodgkinson from Illinois. He drove hundreds of miles in his van plastered with Bernie Sanders bumper stickers to commit this mass shooting. The media and the Democrats have endeavored to portray all mass shooters as white Republican men. Strangely, some of the most prolific mass shooters in history have been black or Latino or Asian American. The Virginia Tech shooter Shung Hoi Cho was an immigrant from Korea. He killed 22 people. Then when he was cornered by police with no further targets to shoot at, he shot himself in the head. There were over 100 people who were seriously injured because they were jumping out of third-floor classroom windows to escape him, and they got broken legs, broken ankles, broken hips. Okay? At the time, this was the worst non-military mass shooting in United States history. Since then, it has been eclipsed by 2 other mass shootings, one of which occurred in a gay nightclub. Guess who the shooter was? No, he wasn't a white Republican. He was a Muslim Arab American. Okay? Gosh, what a surprise. And the third guy in Las Vegas was apolitical. He was not involved or interested in politics at all, like many mentally ill people. Alright? There are so many misconceptions about mass shooters, about what goes on in their heads, and the left-wing mainstream media cultivates these misconceptions with a tsunami of disinformation. The recent mass shooter in Uvalde, Texas, was a Latino. And he wasn't involved in politics either. He was just an aficionado of Call of Duty, a video game. So was the mass shooter in Parkland in Florida. He was a Latino. He was a big fan of Call of Duty. AOC, please wake up. That's about all I have for tonight. If you like what you've seen and heard, give me a thumbs up on this video. Leave a comment below if you'd like. If you have any questions, I'll answer your questions just as soon as I can. Share this video on Facebook and Twitter and whatever other social media you like. Be sure to share it with your conservative friends and family. And subscribe to my channel. Have a great evening.